Have you ever thought, is it possible that your child resents you for loving them too much? It sounds absurd, but if you've ever whispered, "Why are they like this after everything I've done?" You're not alone. You raised them. You gave up sleep dreams, parts of yourself, and now they barely call. They snap, or worse, they're cold. You wonder, did I fail, or did they forget? Sigmund Freud knew that our closest relationships are rarely simple. They stir up powerful feelings, some of them conflicting. A child can love their parents, and at the same time harbor anger or fear towards them. In psychoanalytic terms, there is ambivalent, a simultaneous pull of gratitude and resentment that might be hidden even from your adult child's own awareness. They may not consciously remember every bedtime story or tuition check, but some part of them does, and that part might be overwhelmed. Sometimes when receiving love stirs up too much guilt or dependency, the mind does something unexpected. It flips the script. Kindness from you might awaken anger in them. Your generosity might provoke irritation instead of thanks. This isn't because love truly turns to hate, but because their psyche is struggling. Think of it like this. The more they feel they owe you, the more their unconscious fights that feeling. Nobody likes to carry an unpayable debt of love. It's as if your child senses an invisible ledger of all you've given, and the weight of it makes them want to rip the pages out rather than sign their name in acknowledgement. By denying your goodness or minimizing your sacrifices, they escape feeling indebted. In a twisted way, their ingratitude is a form of self-protection. So why are they like this? Not because you didn't love enough, but perhaps because you loved so much that it challenged them deeply. It's a paradox. The child who has received everything can sometimes struggle the most to give back emotionally. The question that haunts you is, why are they like this after all I've done, does have an answer. But it lies not in what you did wrong, rather in what love stirred within them. To understand that we must look beyond surface behavior and into the hidden emotional dynamics between a parent and grown child. Let's talk about what Freud knew and what you can do. It sounds counterintuitive. How could love ever be a threat? But imagine for a moment what your care might feel like from your adult child's perspective. Love, especially a parent's love, comes with immense power. It can lift them up, but to a wary heart, it can also feel like it's closing in, demanding something. If your child feels smothered or controlled by your well-intentioned affection, that love starts to resemble a cage rather than a warm embrace. Think of times you offered help or advice, and they bristled, telling you, "Stop interfering or I can handle it." In those moments, your love was interpreted as an attack on their independence. When love becomes a threat, every act of kindness can seem like an expectation or a hidden hook. Your son might hear, "I'm proud of you, let me help," and translate it unconsciously to, "You're not capable on your own." Your daughter might take, "I just want to make sure you're okay," and secretly hear, "I don't trust you to make good choices." What you intend as support, they experience as pressure. The more you try to wrap them in care, the more they feel the walls closing in. Psychologically, what's happening is a kind of defensive reversal. The fancy term is reaction formation. When a person cannot allow themselves to feel one way, they flip into the opposite. In this case, if deep down your child actually longs for your approval or feels softening gratitude, they might double down on toughness and ingratitude to protect their pride. Admitting they still need your love might make them feel too vulnerable, as if they were a little child again, a terrifying prospect for someone fighting to see themselves as an independent adult. So they do the opposite act, like your love doesn't matter, or even push it away as unwelcome. It's not that they truly want to reject you. They want to reject the fear of needing you. There's also the sting of pride to consider. For a grown son or daughter, having to rely on mom or dad can inflict what Freud would recognize as a narcissistic injury, a wound to the ego. Imagine a man whose identity rests on being self-sufficient, yet he had to move back home, or accept financial help. His gratitude is mixed with humiliation. To cope, he might lash out at the very parents who helped him, as if to prove he's not beholden. Or consider a daughter who feels that accepting your advice means she's failing at adulthood. She might respond by doing the opposite of what you suggest, even if it harms her, just to assert her autonomy. In these cases, love feels dangerous to them, and dangerous to their fragile sense of self. When love becomes a threat, tenderness can be met with defensiveness, or even cruelty. It's as if your child dons emotional armor whenever you come near, afraid that your genuine care will pierce straight to their softest core. Your "I love you, I'm here for you" is met with a cold shrug or an eye roll. It's painful and perplexing, but it helps to remember this is their fear of talking, not a measure of your worth. Your love challenges them. It reminds them of their vulnerability, their implicit debts, and the childhood dependence they're desperate to outgrow. So they treat your affection like a threat to be neutralized rather than a gift to be cherished. Understanding this defensive stance can soften the sting. Your child's ungrateful behavior isn't born out of malice as much as anxiety. They fear being swallowed up by your love or shackled by the obligation that love carries. And so they raise shields. They may even go on the offensive, turning love into a battleground where they must claim victory by proving they need nothing from you. It's a tragic misunderstanding, one where both sides feel hurt. You feel rejected. They feel endangered by the very bond that gave them life. If love has become a battlefield, it means somewhere within them, your child equates closeness with danger. But what danger could be so great that they'd risk severing the bond with a parent? To answer that, we look to an emotion even more nuanced than fear, an emotion that often hides behind anger. We look at the guilt they cannot bear. Beneath the anger and the eye rolls, guilt often festers. It might sound strange, after all. If they felt guilty, wouldn't they be more apologetic, more eager to make amends? Paradoxically, the opposite is usually true. When your adult child carries guilt, they cannot bear, they tend to run from it or lash out rather than face it. The human psyche will contort itself in all kinds of ways to avoid the pain of feeling "I'm a bad son" or "I've failed my mother." So what do? They invert the guilt. Instead of feeling "I owe you," they decide "you wronged me." If they can convince themselves that you are the reason for the rift, that you were too overbearing, too critical, too needy, then they don't have to feel guilty for pulling away. In their mind, the inner courtroom flips, making you the defendant, and them the plaintiff, leveling accusations, instead of facing their own self-blame. Consider what it means if your child acknowledged everything you did and felt truly grateful. They might also have to confront the fact that they've been cold or cruel in return. That realization, "I've been unkind to someone who sacrificed so much for me," is a heavy weight on the heart. Many grown children simply aren't ready to carry that weight. So unconsciously, they shrug it off by denying your sacrifices or by claiming they never asked for any of it. Have you ever heard your son or daughter say something like, "Well, I didn't ask to be born," or "I wouldn't have these problems if you hadn't raised me that way"? Such statements sting deeply. Yet they are often protective magic spells spoken to ward off the curse of guilt. By blaming you, they magically absolve themselves, at least on the surface, of the obligation to feel remorse or gratitude. This dynamic is fueled by what Freud called the superego, that internal judge or parent voice inside us that deals out praise and blame. Your child's superego might be whispering or screaming inside them, "You're being a terrible daughter. You owe your mother more." That voice triggers shame. But instead of heeding it, they often project it outward. Suddenly, it's not an inner voice anymore, but your voice in their head criticizing them, even if you never said those words. They might then accuse you of judging them or claim you always try to make me feel guilty when in reality their own conscience is pricking them. It's easier for them to imagine an external enemy, you, than to face the fact that they're at war with themselves. Guilt is a profoundly uncomfortable emotion. It can be so unbearable that the mind resorts to repression, burying the feeling deep in the unconscious. But buried guilt doesn't just disappear. It ferments and turns into irritability, defensiveness, depression, or resentment. Your child might not wake up each day thinking, "I feel guilty," but their avoidance of you, or their quickness to anger when you're around, betrays that hidden guilt. It's like a splinter in the psyche. They can't see it, but it's causing constant pain and inflammation. Every time you call to say hello, that splinter moves, and they feel a twinge of discomfort. They may snap at you or avoid the call, not because they truly feel you've done wrong, but because hearing your loving voice reminds them of their unresolved feelings of obligation or regret. One common sign of this guilty conscience is overreacting to perceived criticism. You might gently say, "Hi, it's been a while, I miss you," and they respond with fury, "I'm so busy. Why are you always on my case?" The intensity of their reaction is a clue that something deeper is at play. It's as if they hear your simple, "I miss you," as an indictment. You're neglecting your mother. Shame on you. Unable to tolerate that shame, they strike first with anger to defend themselves against the mere possibility of guilt. In psychological terms, this is a form of projection. They take the self-judgment they can't bear and hurl it at you. Now you are the one who's too demanding or never satisfied, and they in their own mind get to be the unjustly accused one. Tragically, the more guilt they harbor, the more hostile or distant they might become, creating exactly the scenario they feel guilty about. It's a self-fulfilling loop. They feel guilty for not calling that guilt makes them so uncomfortable, they avoid calling even more, which then increases their guilt. Or they feel guilty for relying on you financially. That guilt turns into resentment toward you, which then leads them to treat you poorly. And then there's even more to feel guilty about. This is how repetition compulsion can sneak in. The psyche is trapped in a cycle of recreating the same conflict over and over, almost as if trying to master it or find a different ending. But without awareness, the ending never changes. If you look at your child and see inexplicable anger or coldness, consider that beneath it might lie a hurting person who doesn't know how to make things right or can't even admit something is wrong. Their ingratitude and blame are like a defensive smokescreen masking a deep, inarticulate sorrow or shame. They cannot yet say, "I feel so bad for how I've treated you." That truth is buried too deep. Instead, they say or imply, "You hurt me. You are the problem," because it flips the script and spares them from confronting their own remorse. Understanding the role of guilt can help you step back from taking their words at face value. It doesn't mean you should accept abusive behavior, not at all, but it allows you to see that their cruelty may not be as calculated or heartless as it seems. It's more like a wounded animal striking out in fear. This guilt, sitting heavy and unacknowledged in their soul, is a burden they've carried for years. And ironically, the person they learned so much of their conscience from is you. You are intimately tied into their sense of right and wrong. You are their moral mirror. That is one reason your presence is so triggering. You are their mirror, not their enemy, no matter how much they try to make you one. When your adult child treats you like the enemy, it's easy to believe you must have done something horribly wrong. You might start to see yourself through their angry eyes, questioning if you truly are the nagging mother or disapproving father they paint you to be. But pause and reflect. More often than not, you are a mirror for them, not a monster. The harsh words they hurl at you often reveal the turmoil within themselves. Think about the specific barbs they use. If your child shouts, "You never listen to me," there's a good chance they have felt unheard in life, perhaps by you in the past. or perhaps by others, and now that pain is projected onto you in the present. If they accuse you of always finding fault, it might be because they are secretly always finding fault in themselves. You are the mirror in which they see their own perceived inadequacies and guilt reflected. Rather than face those painful feelings, they try to shatter the mirror. It can look like they hate you, but often they hate the way they feel about themselves when they're around you. This is where Freud's notion of transference helps illuminate what's happening. In therapy, a patient might transfer emotions onto the therapist that really belong to someone else in their life. Similarly, your child may be transferring onto you a whole host of feelings that aren't truly about the current you. They might be reacting to the parent you were when they were younger, or the parent they perceived you to be, rather than who you are now. Old childhood hurts, even minor ones you never knew about, can cast long shadows. For instance, a son who felt criticized as a teenager might still hear criticism in your voice even when you're simply asking a question. A daughter who felt abandoned when you worked long hours might still decades later feel a stab of that childhood loneliness when you're unavailable, and she may blame you with disproportionate fury, as if you were causing the original wound all over again. To you, these reactions are baffling and unfair. To them, they are very real because the feelings are real even if the target is misplaced. You have become a screen onto which they project unresolved grievances, fears, and desires. They might be replaying an old drama, casting you in the same role over and over. In psychological terms, they're relating not to you as you are today, but to an internal image of you formed long ago, tinted by emotion. This image might be only loosely based on reality, but it's powerful. Every time they look at you, that inner image rises like a ghost between you and they react to it. Knowing this, you can begin to separate yourself from the accusations. You can remind yourself, I am not actually the villain they see. You don't have to accept the character they've assigned you in their internal play. Instead of getting drawn into the fight of two enemies dueling, you can step aside from that script. This doesn't mean you have to say this out loud to them, that would likely provoke more anger, but inwardly hold on to the truth that their view is distorted by their own pain. Remember also that a mirror by nature reflects light and darkness impartially. When they stand before you with all their baggage, you will reflect back things they might not want to see. Their vulnerability, their dependence, their failure to show up as a loving son or daughter. It's not that you rub it in, just your presence, your life intertwined with theirs is enough to remind them. In a sense, you know them in a way few others do. And that is frightening to someone who is not at peace with themselves. If they have built a life story in which they are the victim or the hero triumphing over a difficult childhood, admitting your love and sacrifices doesn't fit that narrative. It would force them to reevaluate, to feel things like regret or empathy that they've put on a high shelf. So they push you away, not because you are truly their enemy, but because they can't bear the clarity of your mirror. It's as though they are saying, stop showing me myself. I don't like what I see. As a parent, this insight can be heartbreaking, but also liberating. Heartbreaking because you realize how much private pain your child must carry to act this way. Liberating because you finally understand that you are not the terrible parent they claim you are. Their words are a reflection of them, not a verdict on you. In practical terms, seeing yourself as a mirror can help you respond differently. Instead of reacting with hurt pride, which turns you into the very enemy they imagine, you might respond with measured calm or compassion, refusing to feed the image of the bad parent they're trying to provoke. This might mean simply saying, I'm sorry you feel that way, and not engaging in a tit-for-tat argument. It might mean holding up an emotional mirror of your own. For example, I hear you're upset. I want to understand what you're feeling, which gently hands the reflection back to them. You are not accepting blame that isn't yours. You're just not taking the bait of becoming the antagonist in their story. By stepping out of the enemy role, you stop validating their narrative of conflict. Over time, this can create space for them to see things more clearly, to maybe recognize, even if silently and slowly, that you are not out to harm them. You're simply there, solid and loving, reflecting reality. And the reality is you love them, and they are hurting. It's a realization they'll have to come to on their own terms, but you can at least stop throwing fuel on the fire by defending yourself, as if you were truly at war with them. Seeing this dynamic for what it is also prepares us to look at your side of the equation. Because while you are not the villain, they imagine you are still a player in this relationship dance. And just as they have unconscious drives and defenses, you have your own. Chief among them might be that tireless voice inside that urges you to keep giving, keep fixing, keep trying, even when you're drained. Let's turn our gaze to that part of you, the superego, that keeps you giving. All this time, we've been exploring your adult child's psyche, their defenses, their guilt, their projections. But what about you? You are not a passive character in this story, and your own inner world plays a role in how this drama unfolds. Take a moment to reflect on why you continue to pour yourself out, offering love and support into what feels like a black hole of ingratitude. Why do you persist in giving even when you're met with coldness or cruelty? Part of the answer lies in your own internal guiding force, the voice of duty and conscience that Sigmund Freud called the superego. Your superego is like an internalized parent or teacher, a voice formed from all the shoulds you've learned throughout life. It carries noble ideals. A good parent always puts their child first. Love is unconditional. Never give up on family. These values have likely helped you be the caring parent you are. But when the superego is overly harsh or rigid, it becomes a relentless inner taskmaster. It doesn't care if you're exhausted or hurt. It cracks the whip of "you must do more." You should tolerate this. If you don't, you're a bad mother-father. This guilt-fueled voice can keep you trapped in an unhappy loop, giving and giving long past the point of health. Maybe you hear echoes of your own upbringing in that voice. Perhaps your parents drilled into you that children are forever indebted to their parents, or conversely, that parents must martyr themselves for their kids. Or maybe it's society's voice idealizing the self-sacrificing mother or the ever-providing father. Either way, this superego of yours holds you to a high, sometimes impossible standard. It doesn't easily allow you to say no to your child, because that feels like failing the standard of being a loving parent. So even as your heart breaks from their behavior, some part of you may feel compelled to try even harder, as if you could earn their gratitude or mend the relationship by sheer self-sacrifice. There is also the matter of your own guilt. A parent's guilt can be immense and irrational. You might blame yourself for your child's shortcomings or unhappiness. Did I spoil them? Did I fail to raise them right? Is this my punishment for past mistakes? Your superego is quick to answer those questions with condemnation. Yes, it is your fault. Fix it. Atone for it. So you overcorrect. If you worry you were too hard on them in childhood now, you might bend over backwards to be permissive and generous. If you regret not giving them some opportunity now, you shower them with everything you can. You hope that by giving enough, you'll absolve any sins, real or imagined, and finally feel like a good parent. Yet, dear parent, this constant giving under duress is not truly free and loving. It's tinged with desperation and self-punishment. Freud wrote about how unconscious guilt can drive people to self-punish or repeat painful scenarios. Could it be that on some level you are punishing yourself, enduring your child's abuse or ingratitude as a way to pay penance for whatever you think you did wrong? This might be a tough question to face. No loving parent consciously wants to suffer at their child's hands, but our psyches have strange ways of meeting their own emotional logic. If your superego has sentenced you to a lifetime of making it up to your child, you may feel you have no right to rest, no right to enforce boundaries, and no right to feel angry. And speaking of anger, where have yours gone? Chances are, you've been repressing a lot of your own hurt and anger to keep the peace. That's another trick of the superego at times. It labels those natural feelings as bad or selfish. Perhaps every time a flash of anger rises, "How dare they treat me like this, after all I've done?" Your inner voice swiftly counters, "Don't think that way. You're the parent. Be patient, be forgiving." So you push the anger down. You show a placid face, you offer help again, all while a part of you withers. Repressed anger often turns into depression or anxiety, or leaks out in passive ways. Maybe you hear yourself making the pointed comment, "I guess I'll just go by myself," since you're too busy hoping to get a response that's your anger peeking out sideways, even as you try to stuff it back in under guilt. The tragedy here is that your generous heart is working in overdrive, but not being recognized or rewarded, not even by you. The superego can be like an inner creditor that never marks the debt paid. No matter what you do, it says it's not enough. So you continue to strive and give, emotionally bankrupting yourself, writing checks of time, money, and energy that your spirit can't cash. All the while, your child either doesn't notice or further criticizes you, which then convinces you to try even harder to prove yourself. It's a vicious cycle. The more you give without reciprocity, the more depleted and resentful you become. The more resentful you become, the more guilty you feel for feeling that way, prompting you to give even more to override the guilt. It's time to shine some compassionate light on this pattern. You are allowed to acknowledge that your efforts have not yielded the return you hoped for. You are allowed to admit that you feel used or unappreciated without immediately squashing that feeling with, "But I shouldn't complain." This doesn't mean you stop loving your child. It means you recognize that love and self-sacrifice are not identical. Sometimes love means setting limits, protecting your own well-being, and allowing your child to face the consequences of their ingratitude. But before you can do any of that externally, you must confront that inner voice driving you. Ask yourself, whose voice is it? Who says you must tolerate disrespect to be a good parent? Who says you must fix every problem or always say yes? Is it truly your wisdom speaking, or a fear of guilt and judgment instilled long ago? Your superego may mean well. It developed to guide you to be a responsible, ethical person. But it may be operating on outdated or extreme rules that no longer serve the healing of this relationship or your own health. By recognizing the pull of this inner judge, you can begin to reclaim your freedom to choose a different response. You can start to balance your love for your child with love for yourself. You can realize that continuing the same pattern of overgiving isn't actually helping either of you. In fact, it might be enabling your child to remain stuck in entitlement or anger while you remain stuck in martyrdom. Breaking out of this cycle requires great courage because it means doing something that every cell in your dutiful parent body has been resisting, setting down some of the weight you've been carrying. This brings us to the turning point of our journey, what you can actually do and what you must let go of to change this painful dynamic. The answers lie not in trying harder to please your child, but in finding the strength to change your own role in this story. By now, you've looked into the heart of this painful dynamic and perhaps recognized some patterns in both your child and yourself. This awareness is a powerful first step. But what can you actually do to begin changing things? And equally important, what must you finally release and let go of because it only keeps you stuck? Break the cycle of reactivity. The next time your child lashes out or gives you the cold shoulder, resist the automatic urge to argue, defend, or submit. Instead, do something different. For example, if phone calls always end in shouting or tears, you can calmly say, "I love you, but I'm not going to continue this conversation if we insult each other. Let's talk later," and hang up politely. This isn't meant to punish them. It's to protect your own peace and to signal that the old dance won't continue. When you change your step in the dance itself changes. You cannot control their behavior, but you can control your response. Respond with calm firmness instead of emotional turmoil. This breaks the loop of action-reaction that has been fueling the fire. 2. Set and uphold boundaries. You have the right to basic respect, and it's time to make that clear through actions more than words. If your child only calls to demand money or unload anger, you might say, "I'm willing to help when I can, but I will not be spoken to that way," and follow through. If they habitually take advantage of your generosity, it's okay to draw a line. "I can't pay that bill for you. I know you're capable of figuring this out." Yes, your heart will clench, the superego inside you will scream that you're being selfish. But remember, enabling their behavior is not true kindness. You must let go of the idea that saying no or standing up for yourself makes you a bad parent. In truth, it may be the most loving thing you've done in a long time for both of you. Boundaries are not walls to shut them out. They are guidelines that teach them how to treat you and ultimately how to treat others and themselves. 3. Stop chasing their validation. This may be one of the hardest pills to swallow. You have spent years, perhaps decades, trying to earn a few crumbs of appreciation, hoping that one day they'll wake up and realize how much you gave. For the sake of your sanity, you must let go of this chase. It's like running on a treadmill that never stops. The moment you stop chasing their validation is the moment you can start healing. This doesn't mean you stop caring about them. It means you detach your self-worth from their moods and opinions. If they accuse you unfairly, remind yourself, "I know who I am, and I don't need their approval to know I did my best." If they never say, "Thank you," say it to yourself. Thank yourself for all you've done. Acknowledge your own efforts instead of waiting for them to do it. This emotional detachment, sometimes called detaching with love, means you continue loving your child, but you cease trying to control how they love you back. 4. Allow natural consequences. As long as you keep rescuing or pandering to them to win their love, you shield them from the consequences of their behavior. Consider stepping back. If your adult child refuses to be courteous, you limit contact until they can. If they squander money, you stop bailing them out. This isn't about revenge or abandonment. It's about reality being the teacher. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is let your child face the results of their choices. It might mean enduring their anger when you don't step in to solve a problem, but in time, life's lessons might sink in more effectively than your words ever could. Importantly, you must let go of the guilt that I'm abandoning them by not fixing everything. As an adult, they are responsible for their life. Your job of constant caretaker is over. Now your role is more akin to a consultant available when respect and openness are present, but not on call for abuse or endless rescues. 5. Focus on your own healing and joy. Start reclaiming the parts of your life that have nothing to do with your child's approval. Reconnect with friends, hobbies, or passions that rejuvenate you. Maybe you've put off travel classes or social events because you were preoccupied with your child's drama or waiting by the phone. It's time to live again. This isn't selfish, it's healthy. When you nurture your own well-being, you become less dependent on scraps of validation from your child. You might even find that as you grow happier and more confident, it subtly influences the dynamic with your child. But even if it doesn't, you will have regained a measure of peace. Seek support from those who understand, perhaps a therapist, a support group for parents, or even compassionate friends. Telling your story and feeling seen and supported can bolster your strength as you make these changes. Now let's be honest, doing these things can be scary. The first time you set a boundary or don't rush in to help you may feel crushing guilt or fear. Your child might react badly at first. People often protest when a source of free comfort or support is altered. They might accuse you of not loving them, call you selfish, or storm off. Stand firm with love. Remind yourself that this is not about abandoning them. It's about refusing to abandon yourself anymore. Any change in a long-standing pattern is uncomfortable at first. But with each step you take, each time you stay calm, instead of snapping back each time you say no when you need to, each time you hang up the phone to protect your serenity, you are teaching both yourself and your child that this destructive pattern can no longer continue. Importantly, adjust your expectations. Letting go means truly releasing the outcome. Your actions are not a cunning strategy to make them suddenly become grateful. They are for your own sanity and health. Maybe your child will eventually respond to your new stance and soften, or maybe they won't. You can't control that. What you can control is creating an environment where respect is the norm and removing yourself from interactions that are toxic. You are modeling self-respect and emotional maturity. That alone is a profound gift to them, whether they realize it or not, and certainly to yourself. By doing what you actually can change your own behaviors and mindset and relinquishing what you cannot control, their attitude, their choices, the past, you will step out of the futile war you've been fighting. This opens the door to a different future. Perhaps the relationship will improve, perhaps it won't, but one thing is certain: you will improve. You will no longer be living in constant anxiety and hurt, waiting for another person to validate your worth. And that brings us to the final part of our journey, finding healing that does not depend on them at all. In the end, the most profound realization is that your healing is not waiting on your child's permission or participation. It might feel like your heart can only mend if they suddenly changed, if they came to you with apologies, gratitude, and love overflowing. Yes, that would be wonderful. But true healing cannot be contingent on someone else's choices. It must grow from the soil of your own soul. The good news is that you have the power to heal and find peace, regardless of what your adult child does or doesn't do. This healing begins with accepting reality as it is. You acknowledge with clear eyes the pain of not being appreciated, of perhaps not having the relationship you always hoped for. You mourn that loss, because it is a loss, the loss of a dream. Give yourself space to grieve it. Maybe you write in a journal unsent letters expressing everything you wish you could say. Maybe you shed long overdue tears for the family harmony that wasn't. This honest confronting of your feelings is the opening of a door. Behind that door lies freedom. The freedom to live on your own terms, even as you carry some sadness with you. Healing doesn't mean forgetting or never feeling hurt again. It means the hurt no longer controls your life. As you release unrealistic expectations, you may find weight lifting. The heavy cloud of "if only they would change" starts to disperse. In its place comes a quiet light. The dawning realization that you are still here, deserving of love and peace, even if your child never acknowledges you. You start to cultivate sources of appreciation that don't depend on them. Perhaps you deepen friendships where you feel valued. Perhaps you involve yourself in community faith or volunteering where your contributions are noticed and thanked. You allow yourself to receive love from people who are capable of giving it, rather than fixating on the one person withholding it. And crucially, you give love to yourself, something your superego may have prevented before. You practice speaking gently to that bruised part of you. You did your best. You are worthy. It's okay to let this go. Letting go? It comes up again here because healing is essentially a process of letting go and refocusing. You let go of bitterness not for their sake, but for yours. Carrying resentment is like holding a hot coal. You are the one burned by it. Some parents find that with time, they can even feel forgiveness toward their child. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning their behavior or pretending everything is fine. It simply means you are choosing not to let anger and hurt poison your own heart anymore. You may whisper in your mind, "I release this hurt. I send my child love and hope they find their way, but I release myself from constant sorrow." Notice that this kind of forgiveness and release can happen without a single change on their part. They may still be distant or unkind, but you are no longer zeroed in on that absence or negativity. You've expanded your world beyond it. In doing so, you might find that your identity transforms. You are not just a parent who failed or a victim of an ungrateful child. You are a whole person with a life that, yes, includes a painful chapter, but also includes so much more. You have memories of joy, skills, and talents, other relationships, and maybe new adventures yet to come. The story doesn't end in defeat unless you stop writing it. It's possible that as you heal, your relationship with your child may gently improve. Sometimes when a parent stops pushing, the child becomes curious or less defensive. Sometimes when a parent truly finds contentment, the child senses the change and old patterns fall away. But it's important to approach your healing as your own journey, not a secret strategy to win them back. Some adult children do come around years later. People grow mature and often regret their harshness, and some may not. By the time they figure themselves out, or if they never do, you will have already given yourself the gift of peace. Picture yourself standing in a place of serenity, perhaps in your garden or by a window with sunlight streaming in. There's a sense of inner solidity in you. Your child's life may still be turbulent, but you are no longer tossed by every wave. You carry love for them, of course you do, and always will. But it's a calm love, like a steady flame, not a wildfire of desperation. Whether they draw nearer or keep their distance, that flame of love in you can remain warming your own heart and illuminating your path forward. And on that path, you are free. Free to treasure the good moments of the past without being trapped there. Free to hope for reconciliation, but not pin your happiness on it. Free to live each day fully knowing that you have done enough and you are enough. This is the healing that doesn't depend on them. It's the quiet miracle of finding yourself again after being lost in a storm of conflict and longing. It may not be the perfect happy ending you once wished for, but it is a real and beautiful resolution, you whole and peaceful, stepping out of the shadow of this heartache. And who knows, life is full of surprises. When you stop chasing, sometimes what you've been chasing finds its way to you. But even if it doesn't, you have yourself and you have peace. As we conclude this exploration, reflect on your own story. You've carried a heavy burden of hurt and hope. Now you're learning to lay it down piece by piece. Healing is a journey, and you're on your way. And perhaps someday your adult child will notice the change in the air, the softening, the strength, and maybe, just maybe, they'll feel safe to open their heart a little too. Regardless of when or if that happens, you will be okay. You are reclaiming your life, and with it, the simple yet profound peace that comes from saying, I see the wound, I name it, and I am healing on my own terms. Have you ever felt unappreciated by your adult child? What helped you regain your peace or shift the relationship dynamic? If this video spoke to something deep inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, subscribe, and stay close, because here your silent battles are seen. Until next time, honor your story and take care of your heart. It's carried more than most will ever understand.